Paul Merson, of course it is. Merce, great to see you.
Hi, Jules.
Hey, you were pretty handy, weren't you?
I was all right, yeah. I was all right. I've always played around good players. That's the key. Be around good players.
Yeah. I tell you what, when you look at the Premier League now, how much has it changed to your day?
TV and social media, that's where it's changed more than anything. For me, pitches are better. And I would say the coaching manual's a lot thicker than what it was when I was playing. A lot thicker. There's a lot more.
And you didn't have players putting out statements on Instagram either, did you, in those days, either?
There weren't any Instagram.
No, exactly.
It would have happened in them days. Yeah. It happens today and it will happen again next year.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll come to that over the course of the show. We're going to start then, Merce, with the club that Paul played with for 12 years. Arsenal, of course, who've surprised everyone by coming back in for Eberechi Eze at the last minute to make things even sweeter for their fans. It has ruined a deal that Tottenham Hotspur believed they were close to getting done, as if those clubs needed any more spice to their rivalry. Eze has been a topic of debate on Sky Sports News all day long. But when he signs, can he help them get over the line and win that elusive Premier League title?
I'm surprised Arsenal are signing another player in that position, because you'd think, well, with injuries and everything else and what's happened to their nines in the past, maybe a little bit more backup in the striking department, because Eze is not a striker. We know he can play 10, he's a wide player. I think he's a wide player anymore, he's more a 10. So I'm not quite sure where he fits in there, but he's probably getting paid a lot more money there. Because, Tottenham are well run with their salary structure and everything else, it's well known. I would imagine that the agent and him are getting weighed in a lot more going to Arsenal. So there's Arsenal spending big bucks again. It's time to win a title, right?
It strengthens their squad, definitely. He's a fantastic player. I think everybody thinks that, and he's going to help the squad, certainly. But for me, if it makes them any closer, it depends sort of how you use him. In that 10 position, he's a fantastic player, but the captain plays there, so are they going to maybe try and play him a little bit out of position on the left? Who knows, but he'll definitely strengthen the squad for sure.
I think it's a deal for the heart, isn't it? Like, he's already got his mural painted in the tunnel by the Emirates. He's an Arsenal fan. He played in the academy. It's a statement. We've snatched a really good player away from Tottenham, a rival, if you want to call them that. There's going to be like an avalanche of Sol Campbell banter coming. And I think after a summer of pragmatism, really, with the kind of Norgards, the Keppers, the Mosqueras, this feels like a real kind of maverick signing. Eze plays with real character. And I think if Liverpool do go on to sign Isak, their investment in their attack, having already spent 90 million euros on Ekitike, I think would have felt disproportionate with ours. And I think you can't underestimate the feel-good factor that this guy's going to bring.
A few different opinions there. We'll get Mercy's very shortly. But first of all, our reporter, Gary Cotterill, has been doing a virtual man-marking job on Eze over the last few days. So who better to go to for the latest on this one? Evening to you, Gary. Obviously, Palace have a game tonight, and you're there. It's the Europa Conference League playoff. Eze is, right now, a Palace player. What chance he plays tonight before then saying his goodbyes?
Well, Eze, as he's known here, is a well-known lover of the game of chess. And he's well thought out this move, hasn't he, to Arsenal, his boyhood club, the club he supports. A big part of it has been that grandmaster when it comes to doing deals, Steve Parish, and it seems he's got the size of cheque from his mates at Arsenal that he was looking for in the high 60s if you include add-ons. So the big question, you're right, is what happens this night? Well, I've got some breaking news for you on that. Gathered in the old-fashioned way, Jules, the players behind me parking their cars. They arrive separately for games at Crystal Palace, making their way past the fans into the stadium. Well, first of all, Eze isn't among them. And second of all, Oliver Glasner's also arrived the same way, signing autographs for fans. A couple of fans asked him whether or not Eze is playing tonight. And from his mouth, he said no, he will not be playing tonight. And when he was asked whether he'll be here to say goodbye to the fans he loves so much, he said, I don't even know if he's going to be here. So that move to Arsenal does seem like it's nearing completion. Maybe he's off elsewhere to prepare for a medical, maybe to do the medical even tonight, but not involved tonight in the playing squad. The words of Oliver Glasner.
Interesting, very interesting. Gary, I mean, you know, you've been covering football for many a year now, Gary. Where do you put this transfer story in the list of sort of surprises you've seen? This about turn, it seems, from Eze, two big rivals in this tug of war for a player.
Well, there've been lots, haven't there? I've gone for a few that I've actually been involved in. I remember, I think it was 2013, I was standing outside the hospital where Tottenham Hotspur do their medicals while Willian was having his medical to leave the hospital to go to the Tottenham training ground and sign to join Tottenham. On the way from the hospital to the training ground, a phone call came through and he diverted to Chelsea and signed for Chelsea. So that was one I certainly remember. So not the first time this has happened to Spurs. It's happened to Arsenal as well, of course. Remember Mudryk? Everyone thought Mudryk was going to go to Arsenal. Chelsea got him in the end. What about Robinho? He held a news conference at Real Madrid to say he was leaving Real Madrid, suggesting what everyone thought they knew, that he was going to go to Chelsea. Flew to sign for Chelsea. On the way, he was told he was going to Manchester. But he thought he was going to go to Manchester United. He ended up outside the London offices of Manchester City. I was there. Mark Hughes met him outside and he signed for Manchester City, still thinking until Mark Hughes told him that he was going to be playing for Manchester United. And of course, those were the days before Manchester City were the powerhouse that they are now.
Gary, great stuff. Thanks very much indeed. Gary Cottrell at Selhurst Park.
Gary, with the breaking news there, Eberechi Eze not involved tonight. I haven't got any chess analogies, but we have got three kings round the desk and we're going to hear from them on Eberechi Eze. Did you like that one? It was quite good. Right, this is how Arsenal built one of the most expensive squads in the world and they're still going. Mikel Arteta has plenty at his disposal. The squad he has is worth more than £1.1 billion. And it's been valued as the second most expensive group of players in world football. How did they get there? Let's take a look at how their squad value has changed since Mikel Arteta took over. Lots to look at here. We've got the date timeline along the bottom and then the pounds going up in the y-axis. Now, when he started, the team were mid-table at Arsenal and the squad was worth less than £600 million. Now, a couple of eighth-place finishes later takes us to the summer of 2022. And what I wanted to look at is a couple of these spikes that we're going to talk about here. This one is the summer of 2022. The first major investment, Gabriel Jesus and Alexander Zinchenko arrive. Now, what this chart does do, it doesn't just show us spending, it takes into account other things. Arteta's coaching of the team, meaning that player values rise. It also tells us about the emergence of academy players as well, who come into the squad for nothing and then go on to explode. So think about from here the exponential growth in Bukayo Saka's influence and value. And then we get to the summer of 2023 as well. Arsenal squad tips over this line, which is the £1 billion mark. An amazing array of talent brought in. Declan Rice, Kai Havertz, David Raya and Jurrien Timber are all signed. And finally, we get to the end of the chart here this summer where Martin Zubimendi, Victor Gyökeres, Noni Madueke was signed. Plus, there is the emergence as well of major talents like Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri. I haven't even mentioned that the 15-year-old Max Dowman as well here. Will Arsenal win the Premier League this season? It is the £1 billion question or the £1.14 billion question. Merce, does Eberechi Eze walk into Arsenal's best 11?
In time he will. I don't think he walks straight in and plays this weekend against Leeds, but when they put their best team out, if they were playing Man City or Liverpool at home, for me, he plays. He's the X factor. I think he's the missing piece for Arsenal winning the Premier League, in my opinion.
The missing piece, as in, by signing him, they do win the Premier League?
The pressure's on now not to win it if they don't win it. You know, he's gone out. I think he's bought amazingly. They needed a holding midfield player. They bought a top draw one. They needed a centre forward. They bought a centre forward. Now they bought someone who can break defences. You know, he could get in a lot of teams. I watched Arsenal a lot. When the pressure's on, they find it hard to break teams down. They rely on Odegaard. If Odegaard doesn't do it, and he didn't do it last season. They struggled. Saka got injured. You know, he's the other one they rely on. All of a sudden, you got him. He is different class. He's different class.
So is he actually a more significant signing than striker, Gyökeres?
In my opinion, I think so. I think, you know, because Havertz can play up front. If you know, when you've got Eze in the team, no, he can't. He's injured. But with Eze in the team, he makes things happen. He's the X factor. He ain't going to run around. The fans need to understand that. He's a bit like an Ozil sort of player. You know, they glide around. They're very talented. They're not going to track back 60 yards. You know, forget about that. Give him the ball. He will make things happen, and he will break defences down. You know, I was shocked that Chelsea didn't go for him. You know, they rely on Cole Palmer too much, in my opinion. You need more than one X factor. And if you can get more than one match winner on the pitch, you know, you've got every chance of winning football matches. And I think he's an amazing signing for Arsenal. He's one of the players that I would pay to watch play football.
Our chief correspondent, Carve Solokol, is with us as well as Dave and Mercer and myself. Carve, how is it that we've managed to mock up this image of Eze in an Arsenal shirt and not a Tottenham shirt?
I know we're talking about the fact that Arsenal have hijacked this deal, but Arsenal have actually done a lot of work on this throughout the summer. He's not a player that they suddenly got interested in yesterday. They first made contact with Steve Parish at Crystal Palace just to let Crystal Palace know that they were interested in signing him, and also to let Crystal Palace know that they wanted to be kept updated about any developments regarding Eze's future. Now, what really changed this week is that Spurs obviously made their move. Spurs agreed a deal with Crystal Palace. They agreed a deal with the player as well. But then Kai Havertz was injured on Sunday. So that accelerated Arsenal's decision-making processes. They decided that they couldn't risk going into this season with having the kind of injury problems that they had last season. And that's why they made their move, their late move for Eze. And because Eze's a Arsenal fan, it was a simple decision for him to make. He wanted to play for Arsenal. It's been his dream to play for Arsenal. What I think is particularly interesting with the news that we've just brought you in the last few minutes, the fact that Eze is not going to play tonight, because we were led to believe that the reason he wasn't going to go to Spurs is that Spurs had agreed a deal yesterday with the club and with the player, but Crystal Palace had said, hang on a minute, we don't want to complete this deal just yet because we want him to play on Thursday night. Once that game is out of the way, then he can go to Spurs. But now it seems to be different rules for Arsenal than the rules for Spurs, because he's not going to play, because he obviously doesn't want to jeopardise his move to Arsenal. But it seemed that he was going to play if he'd been on his way to Spurs.
Interesting. And Merce, just in terms of, you know, you talked about how big a signing you think this is for your old club. What will the reaction be like inside that Arsenal dressing room? Is it thumbs up all round at the arrival of a quality player, or is there now a bit of insecurity there from players looking over their shoulder?
Oh, no, they need to win the Premier League, these players. You know, the more top draw players they get in at the top end of the field, the better it'll be. 100%. He will lift it. You know, when you're playing for your Arsenals, your Chelseas, not so much Man United at the moment, but, you know, over the years it has been. You know, your Liverpools, your Man Cities, they kick off and 10 people go and sit behind the ball. 9 times out of 10 in the Premier League. You have to break them down. He breaks people. He glides past people. He doesn't even touch the ground sometimes. He just glides and he goes past people. He wins free kicks. He makes things happen. And this is no disrespect to Palace, where he was outstanding. He's playing with another even top quality player now. You know, gone up another level. Yeah, and I'm so excited. I don't really get excited for signings too often. I'm very excited for this, because I thought Liverpool, if they go and get Isak, you're thinking, it could be another year or second. They are right in it for me now, Arsenal.
Can I just ask you a question? Might seem to be a stupid question, but do you have any sympathy for Tottenham?
Yeah, majorly. I don't know. I'm going to sleep tonight. Honestly, I don't. I've been really trying to pull myself together. No,
They did their best.
Oh, yeah, they did nothing wrong. You know, I'm with you. Why weren't that deal done before Thursday? It's not. No disrespect to Palace, they should get through this tie. They don't really need him that badly. They're not playing one of the big boys in the Europa Conference. They get through this. it should have been done a lot quicker. I don't know if that's Tottenham messing about or Eze thinking, wait there a minute, can I wait a little bit longer? Because, we're still early in the, still nearly, 10 days to the transfer window shuts or so? I think he might have. Yeah, I do feel sorry for Tottenham in a way, in that way. At least they went for the player and they tried to get him. And the worst thing is they've missed out to Arsenal. That's the worst thing about it. If he'd have gone to a United or a City but to lose it to Arsenal, oh, yeah. I like the way they moved on quickly, like they couldn't mess with Arsenal. That was a different matter.
I think what I'm interested in really is that Arsenal have clearly learnt a little bit from last season as well. It was the injuries that really hampered their title charge last season, and everyone knew they needed a striker. Great, they've got the striker in, but it was those other injuries, Bukayo Saka's injury, and now they've got Noni Madueke. They've got another option with Eze. Does he need, do you think, like a flying fullback to come down the left-hand side to help him out so he can come into those inside channels?
No, I think he just needs a good fullback to sit behind him. Let him get on with it. I think you need Eze one-on-one. Get everybody else away. Get everybody. You don't want fullbacks joining in with him and making it claustrophobic. You need it. Just give him the ball, back him up. A bit like Gary Neville and David Beckham back in the day. David was a bit different. He needed a yard and he whipped the ball in as good as the best cross of a ball I've ever seen. This is the same. Just give him the ball and let him go 1v1. I think when you start overlapping, all of a sudden you start bringing another player into the equation and it starts tightening that space up. Give him the ball. Yeah, I couldn't... coming off the left, people say he's got to play as a 10. I don't see that. I think Martinelli will be better away from home, in certain games but when they're at home and they're dominating, they're getting 80, 90% of the ball, he's got to play every home game, in my opinion, because that's where I think Arsenal need to break teams down. And the quicker they break them down, it just brings the crowd down, that nerves goes out the window, and then they can start expressing themselves. But how many times we've seen Arsenal 25, 30 minutes gone 40, it starts getting tense, and I think they've got to do what Man City used to do and blow teams away early doors.
And just a final aside, as well as you rubbing your hands at this and Arteta no doubt rubbing his hands, will Thomas Tuchel be rubbing his hands as well? The prospect of him, Saka, Rice playing every week together?
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, he has to go to the World Cup. You've got to get match winners. Match winners win your tournaments. A team wins your Premier Leagues, a team. But when you get to knockout tournaments for England, it's X factors that win you. We've seen it with Argentina, with Maradona. We've seen it with Argentina, with Messi as well. You need that X factor. You need that. And he gives you that X factor for me. But he will be coming into a team. And he's a team player. He's a team player, and he doesn't need too many opportunities. He doesn't need to touch the ball 60, 70 times in a football match to make things happen. He's played at Palace where they play on the counter-attack and all of a sudden they don't get the ball a lot, but he makes things happen when they get it, and that's what I like. He doesn't... Certain players have to touch it 60, 70 times to make something happen in a game. You go, oh, my God. But he might touch it 15, 20 times. He always makes... I couldn't talk highly enough of the lad. I think everything about him ticks the box for him being at Arsenal.
And it's a great human story for him as well, because this is someone who was released by Arsenal when he was 13. He was in tears. He was an Arsenal fan. Thierry Henry was his hero. Then I think he was released by Fulham as well. He went off. He was at Millwall. He was at Reading. He was at QPR, where he did really well. And at QPR, he did so well that he's got his move to Crystal Palace. And now, 13 years later, his dream has come true. So it's almost... The story of it is never give up on your dreams,
That's how strong-minded the lad is as well. He's had a lot of knockbacks. That tells you a lot about the lad. He kept on going and going and thought, I'm not going to listen to you because your opinions are I'm not very good. I'll go again and again and again, and he's done that. And utmost respect for him, absolutely. That's a lot what he's gone through, and keep on getting knocked back. And he'd have been better than players that were at that club who probably stayed, and he probably thought, wait a minute, I'm better than you. And fair play to him. So, and fair play to Arsenal. They could have gone, that's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? We let him go at 13, but they didn't. They've gone, bang, we'll pay the money, and hopefully they've got to win. There's no excuses now. They've got to win the league.
No excuse.
To have you with us this afternoon, Michael Bridge and Mark McAdam are here, and we do start with the drama that has rocked North London. Eberechi Eze is heading to Arsenal after agreeing a £67.5 million move with Crystal Palace for the England international. So then, Mark, give us the state of play.
Like you rightly say, huge deal for Arsenal, £67.5 million for that man who had 2 years left on his Crystal Palace contract. That's a guaranteed payment of £60 million with add-ons at £7.5 million, which, ironically, is less than his release clause, which expired on Friday. Oliver Glasner took great delight in telling everyone that the release clause had expired. It turned out it didn't make too much of a difference with regards to this man's departure. We're expecting his Arsenal medical to happen tomorrow, and personal terms, not an issue because there's been talks between Eberechi's representatives and, of course, Arsenal over the course of this summer. So just a case, really, of a final farewell at Crystal Palace in what has been a really turbulent 24 hours in North London.
Yeah, very.
I'm more to add, or?
Yeah, a lot.
He's shell-shocked.
A lot, Rob. No, look, this is the transfer window. You know, I got asked yesterday, is this the most exciting window I can remember? And look, it's a real blow for Spurs fans. I think, look, it feels like Emmanuel Petit too, you know, when he was negotiating with Spurs and then he got a taxi to Arsenal. There was that fear. I was thinking it yesterday when we heard the news that Kai Havertz had suffered this injury. Why aren't Arsenal going back in for him? So that when we got the information later that day, I've got to be honest, I wasn't massively surprised. But obviously Spurs fans are distraught now and time is ticking because they need to bring players in.
A big part of the story has been Tottenham against Arsenal, but there is another London club very much involved in this, which is Crystal Palace, who are in action in the Conference League tonight. Gary Cottrell is at Selhurst Park for us. It is a slightly strange scenario, given we know where he's going, Gary, as to whether or not he will play one last time for Palace tonight.
Yeah, it's happened to Spurs again, hasn't it? I remember Willian. I was outside Willian having his medical for Spurs, and he drove away from the medical and then diverted to Chelsea. So, yeah, not the first time that Tottenham have been left in the lurch by a midfielder. Listen, I think he will play tonight. I know there are reports emerging suggesting that Eze may well not play tonight, but I still think that he will. Let's not forget there were reports 24 hours before he played for Crystal Palace at Stamford Bridge on Sunday that he wouldn't be playing. He turned up, he started, he scored, the goal was disallowed, and he was giving his all for the team during that game. And I think the same will happen tonight for several reasons. The first reason is it's a big night for Crystal Palace, their first night in Europe. He's the vice-captain. He'll want to be involved. He'll want a chance to say goodbye to the home fans if he is to go and have his medical at Arsenal tomorrow, and it looks like he is. And the other thing is that Steve Parish has got his way in terms of the fee, the high 60s in terms of millions fee, which is what he was looking for, and he'll get his way on something else as well, and that is that he was insisting any deal done for Eze, whether it was with Spurs or Arsenal, the player plays in this important game for the club tonight. So listen, we know, we've seen in the last 24 hours, anything can happen in football. But I still feel, standing here right now with a few hours to go to kick-off, that he will certainly arrive with the team and certainly make an appearance. If he doesn't start, maybe not, but he'll certainly at some point be out there tonight.
And compared to some of the other scenarios that are going on this summer, you would think that Eze will get a fond farewell from the supporters inside Selhurst Park.
Yeah, they love him because, you know, he really is, I can tell you now, and the guys will tell you too, a really, really top guy. Not only a top player who's turned him into obviously an England international in his time here at Crystal Palace, not only the vice-captain in the leadership group, but a lovely, lovely guy who loves the fans, who loves the clubs, who wants to show respect to the club, and he's done that throughout this whole process. Listen, I think the contrast of what has gone on elsewhere this summer really does underline just how impeccable his behaviour has been. Training properly, turning up on time, giving his all in games. Yesterday, for example, I saw him what might turn out to be the last time he left the training ground. He left quite late. He left actually at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. By then he might have known that things were going to change in terms of his final destination in North London. He looked happy and he spent 10 minutes in his car having his photograph taken, talking to fans, even talking to one fan who phoned him up via his, I assume, his sister's or mother's phone for a chat on the phone in the car, signing as well, and gave me a wave as he drove off. So that is the kind of guy that he is, and I think will suit the Arsenal dressing room very much indeed. Would have suited the Tottenham dressing room as well, but I think that's a factor in why two big clubs are after him. great on the pitch, but great off the pitch as well.
Gary, thank you very much indeed. We'll be back with Gary at Selhurst Park a little bit later on. It was actually quite significant that all of us were actually nodding along when he spoke about the qualities of Eberechi Eze as a person. Michael was talking about that injury to Kai Havertz for Arsenal. Is that the big thing that you think prompted them to go back in for him?
I certainly think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. We've been reporting on transfer shows throughout the course of the summer that Arsenal have an interest in Eberechi Eze, but they were calling at one stage despite talking to his representatives throughout the course of June and July. So a deal with regards to personal terms and the player's desire to potentially go to the Reds' Hearth of North London was all but agreed, but it was just based on certain factors. One of them was Ethan Nwaneri. Would he sign a new contract at the Emirates, which he ended up doing, which then maybe just made their interest slightly cooler. But then, of course, the big factor, Kai Havertz being injured, problem with his knee. We're not sure on the length of time that he's going to be out of the game. So they could suddenly pick up that agreement that had been on the table throughout the course of the summer and say, right, let's action it. This is a player we like. This is a player we know wants to come to the club. We've been speaking to his representatives. Everything is lined up and ready to go. And that was it. So it was all an easy transaction as far as Arsenal were concerned. They've got a player who's an England international, someone who's got a World Cup in 12 months' time, who is desperate to play for the club. So for them, it was a case of box ticks, box tick, box tick. Let's action it, get it done. And suddenly, Spurs have missed out on a player they thought was heading to North London, the White Half.
But I think that's a key point to make, isn't it? That it's not as though Arsenal just thought, on the off chance yesterday, let's sort this out, that this has been, parts of the structure have been in place for a little bit longer. And you wonder whether from the club side or the player side, that Tottenham have sort of almost been used a little bit to smoke Arsenal out and make sure that he ends up there, because, as you said, without personal terms being a problem, that he would have liked to go to Arsenal.
I look at this situation, and Michael won't like me for saying this.
He doesn't like you anyway.
No, yeah, never mind. It feels like Arsenal have acted like a big club. This is, chapter 1 of the Real Madrid book of signing players. We are the biggest club in the land and we can act how we want. And that's exactly the way Arsenal appear to have organised this transfer. They've sat back, they've been relaxed, they've been calm knowing that the player wants to come to them. They've let Spurs do all the negotiation, all the donkey work, all the leg work, go back and forth. The noise in the media has always been about going to Tottenham. And suddenly, as other clubs have done in the Premier League this summer, they've gone in at the last moment and gone, fancy coming to us? Yeah, OK, we'll have you. That's what it certainly feels like in that respect. The way Arsenal have acted like a big club.
I think that's the fear with some Spurs fans. Until it's done, anything can happen. I think that's why, as well, Oliver Glasner, who I think's wonderful, said, yeah, he's in my squad tomorrow, because there were still a couple of things to iron out. I'm going to be honest with you, I'll be stunned if he plays tonight. Around £67 million worth. Palace can win without him. He can go around Selhurst Park pitch and say thank you without going on the pitch.
I think one thing as well that was in that agreement with Spurs is that there was a sort of gentleman's agreement or a mutual understanding between Spurs and Crystal Palace that Palace would like Eze to play in this Europa Conference League qualifying match. And am I right in saying that Spurs were comfortable with that position? I
think they're ironing out the finalities. I just feel, with a medical scheduled for tomorrow, I'm sorry, I cannot see him playing tonight.
But I think that's bang on, and it might go back to your point about acting like a big club. If you're Arsenal, whoever's overseeing the deal, you're saying he's not going anywhere near that Europa League tie, Conference League tie tonight, rather, because it only takes one tackle and the whole thing, it looks completely different.
Especially if you're a footballer and you're half-hearted as well. If you go onto that pitch worrying about getting injured, more often than not, there's a greater chance that you'll get injured because you're not committed in the challenge, in the way you play, in the way you'd normally style your game. So therefore, like you rightly say, Arsenal have lost Kai Havertz. Do they want to go and then potentially lose the player that they're about to spend £67.5 million on because of an injury, which essentially is just a farewell moment in a match? Whilst the Crystal Palace fans love him, he's been sensational for them. Is this really the right thing to do? Actually, walking around the pitch, you still get the opportunity to say goodbye and say your thank yous, because we saw the way he was greeted when he left the training ground yesterday. The fans absolutely love him, adore him, and they're thankful for what he's done. So therefore, do you want to risk this huge opportunity and this big move? And let's be honest, this is the move that Eberechi Eze wanted. Going back to Arsenal was the key moment for him. He was a player that was at Arsenal as a youngster, and he's getting this dream homecoming, this dream opportunity to play for a club that is challenging at the sharp end of the Premier League. They'll probably get to the latter stages of the Champions League. This is a side that really should be winning silverware at the moment, and he's fulfilling his dream. It's full circle for Eberechi Eze. And one thing I will say as well, looking across social media, and of course at one particular account, content creators, rising ballers who do so much incredible work, looking at stars of the future. Here's an interview from 2022 where Eberechi Eze was speaking about that Arsenal journey and what it was like being released at the age of 14.
Arsenal's probably the hardest. Yeah. My dream is to play for them. So hearing them say no at 13, that was tough. And I remember like training after I got released, and I couldn't like focus. I was just crying whilst training, like doing I was bawling. But I think that helped me so much in all the other rejections, because like if I can get through Arsenal releasing me, I can get through any other club releasing me.
I think one of the points there is about Crystal Palace, a huge night for them as well. This is their first ever European match tonight. So I think that the questions as to whether he plays or not is not to disrespect the part Palace have to play in it, more that them receiving the fee and Arsenal wouldn't want him to get injured in this game. Let's flip it to Tottenham then, Michael. Do you think the biggest frustration is that they need players in that position? Do you think the biggest frustration is it's Arsenal who've got him, or is it that Spurs fans are thinking, we've seen this before?
Number of factors. Firstly, yes, your biggest rivals, the North London derby, Arsenal Spurs, one of the best games in the Premier League. Arsenal have now got the player Spurs have been trying to sign. And unfortunately, their Spurs fans have just had to take it, and Arsenal fans really gunning for them, pardon the pun, at the moment. Another thing that's frustrated them, right, we found out yesterday Kai Havertz got injured. When did James Maddison get injured? A few weeks ago. That's frustrated them as well. So they're frustrated. They feel like they're back to square one. It's been very public. Morgan Gibbs-White, that situation. Spurs feel they couldn't have done any more in that situation. But Spurs feel they couldn't have done any more in this situation as well. They're just minute details ahead of completing the deal. I don't really go along with he supported Arsenal as a boy. I mean, if my son got offered an Arsenal scholarship, I'd go to Arsenal. Yeah, like it's about what he can offer.
Is that exclusive?
The Spurs can offer Champions League football as well. It's a massive blow. Now what Spurs have to do, they've got to push on and get these targets. No prospects for the future. They have to improve the squad, and I think they're aware of that. I know they're aware of that. Look, and get someone on the same level as Eze, or with someone who can go into Thomas Frank's side and play Premier League and Champions League football. That is the challenge now. This transfer is done, gone.
One of the names mentioned who had Andy Brassel on a little bit earlier on today was talking about someone like Brahim Diaz, who has experience across Europe. He is a very unique player, Eze. What sort of player do they need to fill the Maddison gap? Because you would also argue that Gibbs-White is a slightly different player to Eze.
There's one name I'm told from Monaco, Magnus Akliuch, is a number 10, fantastic left foot, someone they've monitored. They've monitored a number of numbers. There's not one football club of any size in the Premier League that has one choice. They've got a number of choice. Look, in an ideal world, for homegrown reasons, England international, they'd have loved Eberechi Eze. Thomas Frank would have loved Morgan Gibbs-White. They're different kind of players, to be honest with you. But Spurs just have to move on now. There's a real frustration among the supporters. I totally get that, totally. And the fact I think if it was like a head-to-head for weeks, it wouldn't have been so bad. It's like, oh, OK. I think it was the fear out of nowhere it's happened, when it was so close.
Another part of the deal or the discussions was Richarlison and whether he would be used as a make-weight in any potential transfer. As a guy who scored twice against Burnley on the opening weekend of the season, it'd be interesting to hear his take on the way that this has played out and his name being involved in it all.
I mean, Mark will know, like when clubs, it's like moving house, it's like a domino effect.
Transfer. As a guy who scored twice against Burnley on the opening weekend of the season, it'd be interesting to hear his take on the way that this has played out and his name being involved in it all.
I mean, Mark will know, like when clubs, it's like moving house, it's like a domino effect.
Transfer. As a guy who scored twice against Burnley on the opening weekend of the season, it'd be interesting to hear his take on the way that this has played out and his name being involved in it all?
I mean, Mark will know, like, when clubs... It's like moving house. It's like a domino effect. So this is... I don't think I've seen a summer like it with so many players wanting to move on so desperately. We mentioned Johan Wissa, Thomas Frank likes him. It might have just been a discussion brought up. I don't think it went as far as we'll offer him straight away. What Spurs have to do now is just move on. They want a number 10, a left winger and a centre-half.
Quick one then. What does Arsenal's front four look like?
Pretty dynamic. I know there's a lot
Who
of...
are the four was more the question.
Well, I think Victor Gyökeres at the minute will be the number 9 through the middle. I love the fact that they've got pace and energy from Noni Madueke. You'd imagine that Eberechi Eze will play as that 10 in behind. Odegaard maybe as an 8. Declan Rice alongside him. Zubimendi as the pivot before... I think it actually starts to sound quite exciting. Bukayo Saka on the right-hand side. Suddenly, this is an Arsenal team that have got no excuses when it comes to going and winning the Premier League.